Welcome back to the Junius Malpe channel. Today we're going to cover a bit of the news, but we're going to take a break from just going over the current events and just discuss and kind of regroup where we are and why it is you and I have made the decision to invest in precious metals. Investing might not be the right terminology. It's more of because I don't speculate. I'm not investing in gold hoping to earn a quick buck, to flip it, to sell it. And gold's different. Precious metals are different. I have had a lot of family that have used stocks and bonds and mutual funds and so on to earn money and preserve money. I have also done so myself in the past. And it's interesting because we've talked about this before. Gold, silver, we'll use those two mainly to discuss here, but platinum, palladium, copper. But like I said, we'll stick with gold and silver for now just because they go back so far. There's so much more to them. There is so much more to them than just being hey, I'm going to park my wealth over here. It's a vehicle that I'm putting my wealth in, and then you just forget about it. Some people may do that, but in order to do that, it takes quite a few of us have to have kind of an understanding or a faith or justification, a reason of why we do that. And I would argue that people who have a faith in the US dollar and its strength to span all time and to basically last in perpetuity, as people seem to believe, that same level of faith is required to invest in gold, to save in gold. And why do you ask yourself, why do you convert your money, your hard-earned savings, into this lump of yellow metal that has seemed to exist on the planet since the dawn of man and been a unit of exchange since we figured out how to break it up into little pieces and pound shapes out of it? So why do we do it? I've already shared with many of you on this program here why it is that I do, and we're going to review it a little bit, because sometimes when we, as a gold hawk, person who invests in gold, we seem to get blasted quite a bit. You guys saw how Bellang, the gentleman that operates a very reputable channel on here, he's got a little symbol of a dragon laying on a pile of gold. You see how he's kind of made the decision to withdraw from YouTube and no longer really produce videos in the public domain as he has. And I would imagine, I'm kind of speculating here, but I get the impression that a lot of it has to do with the vitriolic attacks he receives from people who are what I would call anti-gold, or just pro-establishment individuals that are for the status quo and the way things are today. People that are really entrenched and stuck in the way things are, rather than looking at the hope of the future and things that could be, or ways to change the status quo. So in a way, people like us, like Bellang and myself, who are looking for a different way to do things, we're progressives, whereas these other individuals are, I guess you could call them conservatives, because they don't want to change. They want to stay with what we're doing right now, as far as monetary policy and the way money is created and everything like that. Some people would say that we are the ones that are conservative because we want to go back. We kind of want to go back to a gold standard, and there's a reason for that. I too, this channel, have received a tremendous amount of vitriolic little messages and hatred and arguments, and people using derogatory terms towards myself and anyone who's following the channel, because those people are against gold and they think we're just stupid. And believe me, it's put a lot of thought into this. I'm not willing to throw my money away. There's a reason that we're in gold, and I'm getting to it. So I know this is kind of rambling and staggering on, but just bear with me here. what I'm trying to say is gold is basically, it takes you on an ideological path. When you choose to invest in gold, you basically set forth on a little journey, and you start reading and you learning, and you realize the role that it plays in history, the puzzle piece that it is, the key that unlocks so many doors. And in a way, it's I would liken it to the Matrix, taking the red pill or the blue pill, whichever one it is that, wakes you up. Because when you start realizing how much is affected and why things have happened throughout history based on gold, and we can't blame everything on gold. I mean, believe me, I'm not saying that every single thing that happens, if you see a butterfly fly, the butterfly effect, flap its wings, and that's because of gold somewhere in the history. No. What I'm saying is a lot of things that have happened internationally in trade, with the petrodollar, oil, with gold, with just looking at the U.S. economy being one of the most powerful countries and powerful economies in the world for the last almost century. You walk the path. Let's just briefly join me. Let's go through it fast. Let's do a quick timetable here. The U.S. was founded. The founders had problems with paper-backed currency, the Continental. They saw the effects, the rot of unbacked currencies and broken promises from the hands of government institutions. And then they wrote in the Constitution, as you can read, the power to coin money. It's discussed in there. The weights, you look at the Coinage Act. We've discussed that on this channel as well. There was multiple coinage acts, but all of which basically dictated the weights and measures of the metallic content of our coinage and what units would be what they'd be called, how they'd be issued. There were limits to how many pennies would even be created because they didn't want to flood the market with low-value pennies. And then we move on. So the economy there. We have these coins circulating. There was paper at the time, but each paper note, as you know, was backed by metal currency, metal coin. The Civil War disrupted some of those things. We talked about that on this channel in the past. If you watched the little documentary lecture we did here, where we just read The Federal War on Gold by Jacob Hornberger. Great article. Look it up, read it. If not, just go listen to the video. I just read the article to you. But, we talk about the Hepburn versus Griswold Supreme Court case and how that changed the legal tender laws in the United States and what that meant for us, for the people. Moving on, we still had gold-backed currency. They were still printing bills. And then we come to 1913, the founding and the creation of the Federal Reserve System. That's an entirely different, that's a lot of information there, but it's created, 1913, and under dubious circumstances, of course. The Roaring '20s come up, followed by the big bust and depression of the '30s. Stock market crash, 1929. But, and then we look at what FDR did. Seizes private gold. Basically declares the ownership of gold illegal for U.S. population. The government could still transact in gold and pay debts with it and ship it overseas, but he calls in the gold like a king from the public. They load it onto rail cars and ship it to Fort Knox under guard. There's one person in the whole country that basically gets convicted for non-compliance with this. However, it was a very low complied with law. There was there was a lot of people, I guess I'm going to tell you, try to clarify this thought here. A lot of people in the United States didn't comply with the law. That's why there's so many coins from that era that still do exist, and you find them in coin shops and so on. People hoarded them away, especially people who saw the writing on the wall. But the government had to set an example, and so they did convict one individual for not playing ball, some lowly farmer. So the government then revalues the currency, the valuation of the dollar, from $20.67 per ounce of gold to $35. So immediate 60% debasement in the value of the U.S. dollar. And then it made the U.S. government able to pay its bills just that much better, easier. Then there was the breakdown of Bretton Woods. We saw that after World War II. You know, the Bretton Woods Agreement took place. The dollar became the world reserve currency, the dominant currency of the world, where we basically held the power to issue the most powerful currency. And we promised we'd kind of tie it to gold. Emphasis on kinda, because when we get to this Vietnam War, we start spending too much. And we've covered this on the channel before as well. You saw where France and England, they start to call on their gold or question the U.S. honesty in its issuance of Federal Reserve notes. That's when we see Nixon close the gold window. 1971 basically says, hey, we're not going to convert dollars into gold anymore. We're not going to pay our debts in gold, and you guys can't convert them in that. Take the dollars as is. They're just you. That's what you get. You get what you get. Yeah, troubling time for the world. It was supposedly going to be temporary. However, it has been permanent, because you cannot no longer convert the dollars into gold if you're a foreign country, foreign entity. And then in 1974, a strange thing happened. They started legalizing gold for ownership again in the United States, private individuals. So we finally saw gold that had been flatlined at, what was it, $42 an ounce, because that's what it was valued at that time by the U.S. government. I believe the U.S. government still values gold at, what, $42 or $42.50, as it is on the books. But in 74, it became legal to invest in. Krugerrands were available, some other coins worldwide, sovereigns and so on. And then in 1986, the U.S. started minting gold for us to invest in or buy as collectors, the Eagle series from the U.S. Mint. But it hasn't been very long, 36, 37 years now, what it is, back to 1974, what is it, 40 years since gold became legal. So it's really hard to base a chart over a span of time just on a 40-year window, especially as long as history is, and as long as, even if you overlay from 1974 till now, the values of gold on a timeline for the history of the United States, it's difficult because it was such a fixed rate or a fixed value for so long. I know a lot of hardcore free market guys out there will say that was wrong. It should have fluctuated in price the whole time with as a free market, and instead of having a fixed value and a fixed ratio with silver. And again, there's so many other topics that branch off of this conversation. It's kind of hard to stay on track. I hear what you guys are saying, if that's one of you guys out there that's thinking that in your head. So my point is, big roundabout way of getting to it, you can see that gold has a pretty long history, and it's surrounded by intrigue and mystery, and it's been banned. There's so many things you can read about online as far as and legitimate articles, by the way, that almost come across and seem like a conspiracy when it comes to the movements of gold. And when you invest in gold, it's almost like you're picking a side on this thing. Because it's true. There is a war on gold. And I wouldn't so much as call it just a federal war on gold, as in the federal government of America. They're not the culprit, and they're not the evil one in this whole thing, wrapped up in red, white, and blue. It's bigger than that. But there are those that oppose gold, and they do it for, I would say, very mischievous reasons. And to me, that in itself, I guess that might be a little bit of a rebellious streak in me, a little anti-authoritarian attitude that I might have. I might have a problem with authority. But that might be the reason why I choose gold over paper. Because they hate it so much, because they don't want me to. It's almost like when you tell a little kid, hey, don't do that, and the kid looks right at you and then does it anyway. Well, I'm not a child. And the state, the government, those in charge or who have placed themselves in charge or believe they're in charge of this planet, they're not my parent. They're not my father. They don't own me. And that's what it gets down to. Who owns you? Who owns your wealth? Who owns the store of your labor? You do. Put it in whatever you want. Put it in seashells if you want. Transact with what you want. It just so happens that gold for 7,000 years or whatever, gold and silver, have kind of been that agreed upon lump of metal that the majority of societies have agreed is a good store of value that lasts, that is recognizable, easily divisible, doesn't corrode, doesn't rot. It's rare. And it has a lot, basically every property that something of value in a monetary unit needs to have, according to even Alan Greenspan. If you read Alan Greenspan on gold, he wrote an entire paper, gave an entire speech on why gold is the preeminent unit of exchange for all of mankind. And to me, gold really does reflect individual liberty. It reflects freedom. It shines like the sun when it comes to that. It's a beacon of light for liberty and freedom. Now, I'm not worshiping the metal here, but I'm just trying to really colorfully illustrate what it is I feel like gold represents as for us who invest in it. And I believe there's a reason that it's slapped with unnecessary and unjust taxation laws to discourage investment into it. As far as any other investment vehicle, it is a gold alone that is attacked with 28% tax laws and income tax. I mean, it's really, it gets to the point where you realize that if it's being attacked so much, there has to be something to it. There has to be more to it than we're led to believe. And I can never get from those that are really opposed to gold, or that argue with those of us who are gold hawks. You know, you see these people on here that are dollar hawks. They think the dollar's the best. They're Dow hawks. Let's call them bugs. Dow bugs. They're dollar bugs. They're Wall Street bugs. They're the little bugs that crawl around on the internet and on the TV screens and just preach the value of the U.S. dollar and the U.S. economy and investing in bonds and municipal bonds. And, they're the guy that's telling you, hey, you should go buy some really strong yielding municipal bonds for the city of Detroit right now. Well, there is room for investment in the world. And it used to be you could invest in the stock market with dollars that were backed by gold. So it's not one or the other. We could still have an investment apparatus. We could still have a stock market. We can still have savings and loans and interest rates and all of these things with gold as a part of the process. Except it's excluded from the process, and therefore we're left with what we have today. And I'm not the smartest or sharpest tool in the shed. I would leave the designs of all of that to guys that know a lot more than I do. I think Professor Fouquet would be a good start. Having guys like him in there, and Peter Schiff. There's so many other names, but basically anyone at the Austrian School of Economics, you get a good think tank together with these guys, and you can figure out a way to do this, to execute a better economy. But that's not the topic of this conversation here. What led me to this today was there's some headlines coming out, obviously, and I was going to get to that, and I kind of took a roundabout way of getting there. But talking about the dip in gold, and because of the decision in Greece, because of this, because of that, and they're always really quick. You always see it. They're very fast to point out dips or falls in gold, the markets and the pundits. But they're pretty slow to recognize whether gold has been strong lately or not, or whether gold has spiked, or if it's going up. They're always prone to just pointing out gold going down. And I find that interesting because they don't usually recognize its strengths. They only point out its weaknesses, which no one wants to be around a person who only points out their weaknesses. So, I guess I don't really know where we're going to go, where else we're going to go with this conversation. It's kind of a ramble today, but it's more of a pep talk for those of us that are still sticking around and listening right now, because I know some of you guys need it at times when it comes to investing or buying in metals, because there's so many people out there that are talking you down, and it's one of those things you just need to have. You can't really look at it. Like I said earlier, we're not investing in gold to make a quick buck. I'm investing in it because of what it is and what it represents, and where I truly believe at some point the world will end up and where it is going. Because I don't believe the dollar will always be as strong as it is. I don't believe that the future will always be as productive and yield as much as it is currently. I don't believe in unending prosperity. I don't believe that that is written anywhere or guaranteed anywhere. And the way the world's moving and the track record and resume of destruction that I've seen played out over the last several decades, it is my personal belief that things will worsen. If you want to let's just get right down to it. What is that called? Brass tacks. Let's get down to brass tacks here. Let's cut through the fat, cut to the chase. I truly believe, this is coming straight from the heart, guys. If you've made it this far in the video, then you're truly a dedicated Junior Small P channel follower, and you'll hear it how it is now. I truly believe, we had to spend the first part of this video just to get everyone bored that didn't want to be here and get them off. Just get them off the channel so they don't even get to hear this part. But let's get to it. I truly believe that the world is going to see some kind of a reset economically, and if not, that could happen, but major economic uncertainty, possibly destruction, economic destruction, that far surpasses what we saw in 2008 and spanning to about 2011 or 12. I also believe that there's going to, this is coming from other people I've read, guys that study, foreign policy and so on and so forth, but I don't think this is going to be the first century without a major war. And what I mean by that is every century has major wars, as if you look back through time, the last century had several, and I don't think we have learned enough to escape those errors and those ways, and I believe that there could be and will be a major international conflict. Major. As in the kind where it's like, the U.S. versus Russia or China, big players, the big guys on the field playing. None of this like major first world nation bombing a little, third world crap hole somewhere in the Middle East or Africa or Southeast Asia. It's not going to be one of those situations. It's not going to be that. It's going to be big. It's going to be the two biggest kids on the block that finally realize they need to start fighting. And someone's going to get bloody. Someone's going to get more than the bloody nose. And as we know, when big wars happen, things happen to currency. We are already seeing currency wars, guys. You're seeing it all over the news. And a lot of you were quick to point out, because I brought it up and I knew you would. I knew you all saw it. Yeah, the media is acting like it just happened. Like they just woke up. They just realized currency wars are something to even talk about. I'll bet you there's some people on the news on like CNN and Fox. It was the first time they had ever used the word currency and wars in the same sentence back to back. That's how new it is to them. It's not new to any of you out there, and that's for sure. But I think, and that again, we're all over the place here today. We're all over the place. I've had a busy day, so I didn't come into this scripted or prepared. I never do. I don't write a script for this type of stuff. This is we're just talking here. We're just having a conversation, as we've said in the past. That's what this channel is. It's a conversation between you guys and each other, myself, and the little comment threads down below. Just bouncing ideas around. But what I'm trying to tell you is I think and I truly believe that there is something coming that is much bigger than you or I can even comprehend as far as global unrest and uncertainty, which will translate into economic unrest and uncertainty, which will translate possibly into economic resets, currency devaluations, inflation, hyperinflation, deflationary cycles, all of that. Who knows where it's going. But I know one thing. I do know that gold will hold value, and it will be valuable then just as it is now. That it will buy goods and services in the future just as it does now. I cannot guarantee that the dollar will do that. Nobody can. It could look like the $100 trillion Zimbabwe note tomorrow. And anyone who says that that's not possible or not true is a liar. Anyone who says that the US dollar could never end up like the Zimbabwe dollar is a liar. Anyone who says the euro could never end up like the Zimbabwe dollar is a liar. And I'll tell you why. Because they're all paper currencies. Is it the fact that one is it only because the one is from an African nation? That would make you a racist. So I would say that anyone who believes that somehow Western currencies are impervious to the effects of inflation and hyperinflation that it took place in Zimbabwe, because they're Western and Zimbabwe's African, then that would make you a racist. Remember, the Zimbabwe dollars were printed on the same printing presses. I have a video on this. On the same printing presses that the euro notes are printed on in Germany. The same kind of paper in the same print houses. You can look it up and read all about it. The only difference is whose face and what images were stamped onto them. There's a lot holding the dollar up right now. But it's just a lot of smoke and mirrors and a lot of hot air from a lot of guys in suits. The dollar, as we've talked about before, thanks to the great analogy by Max Kaiser, the dollar is just the leper with the most fingers left. It's, it's not, in 10 years, yeah, we might have the dollar, but what is it going to buy? There's a lot more to what's going on than we are led to know. And well, I've already told you how I feel about it, what I believe to be true, and what could possibly come of all this. And it's just that I think when you buy gold, when you hold gold, you're basically opting out of the system. You've realized what's going on, you've seen the light, you've seen what's happening, and you say to yourself, you know what? I'm not going to play by their rules anymore. And I'm not going to play their game anymore. Because in their casino, the house always wins. So I'm going to take my chips off the table. I'm going to go convert them into something else, gold perhaps, silver, and I'm going to go home. So call me when the casino's burning down, because I'd like to come back with my gold and buy the piece of real estate that it was sitting on, and maybe build a library or someplace useful. You know what I'm saying? So, not that any of you needed this pep talk, because I think all of you believe as strongly as I do in gold, especially if you've made it this far as a gold saver, silver investor, a stacker, whatever you want to call yourself. If you've made it through the last couple of years and seen the ups and the downs and the downs and the downs, but just remember, gold is strong. It's holding strong every day. And despite the unending and unwavering assault and attacks on its reputation by the mainstream financial media, and despite the political attacks and the global attacks, it's still holding its value. And not only that, the very people that are attacking it, what are they doing? Well, there you go, guys. I'm going to end it right there because we've just gone too long. I actually went to the absolute limits that this camera is capable of doing, which was a 29-minute video tirade. So maybe it puts some of you guys to sleep. Maybe you're running on a treadmill or you're driving in your car. For those of you that were part of the program this entire time, I thank you. Appreciate you being here. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and throw in a comment. But I appreciate you all being part of the Junior Small P channel. This is Junior Small P signing out. I'll see you guys next time. I appreciate you all being here.